Chosen one, there is something I am going to say right now, and I need you to receive it. This is your fifth encounter. Before today, there were four. In the spirit across the months you have just walked through, there have been four distinct moments when something divine was moving toward you with a specific word. A word about who you are. A word about what is being reorganized around you. A word about why the season you just came through was so long and so heavy and so confusing. And 4 times, the word got close. But it did not fully land. I hear the Spirit saying this: the fifth encounter carries something the first 4 could not. It carries finality. What could not settle in the first 4 because you were not yet carrying the weight that makes a person truly ready to receive. Something of this magnitude is ready to settle now. God said, "Not this time will my chosen one miss this word." So, I want you to do something right now. Whatever pulled you away from this before, set it down. Whatever voice in the back of your mind says, "This is probably like everything else," quiet it for just a moment. Because what I have been given to share with you is not general, it is precise. It was held back across 4 attempts, and it is being released in full right now to someone who is finally ready to carry it. You are ready, chosen one. The fifth has come. Here is what I want you to understand about how this works. Think of it like a GPS. When you take a wrong turn, the GPS does not shut off. It does not grow impatient. It does not abandon the route. It simply recalculates, and it keeps going. Every recalculation is not a failure. It is a more precise path being drawn toward where you were always supposed to arrive. What God has been doing in those 4 approaches is exactly this: 4 recalculations. Not because you were off course and beyond reaching, but because the destination required a version of you that had to be built along the way. Let me show you what those 4 approaches actually felt like from the inside, because I believe some of this is going to feel very familiar. The first sign is one that most people dismiss almost immediately. It is a restlessness that does not come from tiredness or stress. You can sleep, and it is still there. You can distract yourself for a whole day, and by the time you stop, it is still sitting there, quietly at the center of you. Not anxiety, not confusion. This is your spirit registering that something is moving toward you from the other side of what you can currently see. The second sign is a thought that does not quite feel like yours. It arrives too complete, too specific, too sure of itself to have come from the ordinary function of your mind. You cannot trace where it came from. You cannot reverse engineer it. It simply appeared like something placed rather than generated, and it usually points in a direction your logic alone cannot fully justify. Before I keep going, and I want to say this because everything in this message connects what I am about to walk you through, is layered. Every layer matters, and I do not want you to leave before the full picture is in front of you, because by the time we reach the end of this, you are going to understand exactly why those 4 moments happened the way they did. You are going to receive a truth about who you are that this entire season has been building toward. You are going to leave with something real and practical, a way to recognize when God is approaching you again, and what to do when He does. And at the very end, I am going to speak something over your life that I believe you have been waiting to hear for a long time. Stay for all of it. This was designed to be received together. The third sign is one that tends to arrive without warning. It is a sudden, unexpected stillness that drops into the middle of everything. You are in the noise, in the weight of an ordinary day, and then, for a moment, everything inside you goes quiet. Not because the noise stopped, because something deeper than the noise took over. That stillness is not emptiness, chosen one. That is the frequency of approach. The fourth sign is a shift in what you can tolerate. Things that used to feel fine certain conversations, certain places, certain ways of spending your hours start to feel like they are costing you something you cannot afford to keep paying. You have not become difficult. Your spirit is simply beginning to protect what is being built inside you. If any of what I just described is your story, if even one of those 4 signs has appeared in the last months of your life, type 777 right now. Let that be your marker. Let that be your yes. The 5th sign lives underneath all the others. It is a quiet sense of standing somewhere new, even when nothing around you has visibly changed. A feeling that a door is open, somewhere, even though you cannot see it clearly and cannot name what is on the other side. You know it in a way that goes beyond what you can explain. You are standing at a threshold. Here is what I want to say about the season that carried you to this point. The waiting was not silence from God. What felt like silence was not the absence of a message. It was a message in transit, being carried, being prepared, being made ready for a receiver who was being prepared at the same time. The GPS was not broken during those 4 recalculations. It was routing, and every moment of wondering, every moment of questioning whether you had been forgotten, that was the route doing its work in you. You were not abandoned in the waiting, chosen one. You were being built in it. If this message found you at the right moment, stay connected. There are more words being prepared for what you are walking into. Let this space be one that can find you when they arrive. But here is what most people miss. Here is the thing that changes the entire story when you finally see it. The restlessness, the borrowed thought, the unexpected stillness, the shift in tolerance, the threshold feeling. Those were not the beginning of what God was doing. They were the signal that something had already begun. What was actually happening inside each of those 4 approaches goes much deeper than a signal, much deeper than a feeling. And what I want to show you next is what those approaches were building in you and why every single one of them had to happen exactly the way it did before the 5th could arrive. Stay with me, because what comes next changes the way you read everything that has happened to you in this season. The GPS gave you 4 routes, and every time the route changed, something in you was changing along with it, whether you were fully aware of it or not. That is where I want to begin, because here is what most people assume when they hear that God tried to reach them 4 times and the word did not fully land. They assume something went wrong. They assume they missed it. They assume the delay was a failure somewhere either in them or in heaven. But the delay was neither. It was architecture. There are 3 things at work every time a divine approach arrives and does not yet fully land, and I want to walk you through all 3, because together they are the explanation for your specific story. The first is this: you were not yet carrying the weight that makes a revelation receivable. That sounds strange at first, but think about it. There are things you can only truly understand when you have been through enough to hold them. There are words that can only land when the person receiving them has developed enough interior space to carry what they demand. God's timing is never about your worthiness. It is about your capacity. And capacity is not something you are born with complete. It is built in seasons, exactly like the one you just walked through. The second thing happening in each approach is this: the people and the circumstances around you in those moments could not have sustained what was about to be placed on you. Some seeds cannot survive certain soil, and God is too precise, too deliberate, to plant something in you that the environment around you would immediately press out before it had a chance to take root. Each recalculation was not only adjusting your readiness, it was waiting for your surroundings to shift enough to protect what was coming. The third goes deepest of all. The message itself was not yet complete. There is a pattern in the sacred text that carries this truth across centuries. A young man named Joseph dreamed the same essential vision twice, two dreams, same message, different images. Years later, two men close to him dreamed dreams that he interpreted. And then a king dreamed twice more, and again Joseph interpreted. The same truth, spoken 4 times across different nights and different mouths before it could be received and acted upon in full. Before the revelation could land, the one who carried it had to be formed into the person who could handle what came with it. There is a second man whose story takes this even further. For 40 years, he lived in a wilderness that was not his destination. 40 years tending someone else's flock, carrying the weight of a calling he had almost stopped believing in. And in those 40 years, God was not absent. There were moments, quiet ones, small ones, when the approach was felt. When a thought arrived that felt too large to be his own. When something in him knew he was made for more than what the desert was showing him. And each time, the moment passed without fully landing, not because he was faithless, but because he was still becoming the man the burning bush encounter required. And when that moment finally came after all of those approaches, after all of that formation, he stopped in front of a fire that did not consume what it touched. And the voice came. And this time, it landed. Not because God suddenly tried harder, because the man standing at that bush was not the same man who had entered the wilderness 40 years before. He had been built, slowly, through every approach that came before. What felt like a missed window was actually a window being widened. What felt like a word that did not reach you was actually a word growing stronger in the carrying. What felt like divine silence was actually divine preparation, moving through every one of those 4 approaches toward the one you are standing in right now. If something in your spirit just shifted, if what I just said unlocked something in you, type, "I see it right now." Let that be your declaration that you are beginning to understand what was actually happening in the season behind you. But even that the formation, the timing, the positioning is still only the surface. There is something underneath all of it, something that connects everything I have just shown you to what is about to come next. And it lives in a single word. Go back for a moment to the image of the GPS. I told you it was recalculating, but I want to show you now what the moment of arrival actually looks like, not in modern language, but in the original language of the sacred text. There is a Hebrew word that appears in Scripture at the moments when God finally breaks through to someone after a long period of approach. The word is paratz. Paratz does not simply mean to arrive. It does not mean to gently enter. The full meaning is this: to burst through, to overflow, to break past every barrier that has been holding back what was always meant to flow. It is the image of water that has been held behind a dam for a long time, and then the dam gives way, and everything that was contained there comes rushing through at once. Not a trickle, a flood. That is what the 5th encounter is, chosen one, paratz. Not another quiet signal, not another gentle approach. A bursting through of everything that was compressed, refined, and made more precise across 4 recalculations, arriving all at once. The dam has given way. Every time you almost turned away, you were still in the preparation. Every time the message faded before it fully reached you, the message was being strengthened in the silence. Every time you called it coincidence instead of appointment, heaven was marking it confirmed and continuing the approach. Now, I want to give you something you can carry beyond this moment, something practical and real. Here is what I call the 5 encounters protocol. It has 2 parts. The first part is recognition. When God is approaching you, 5 markers appear: a restlessness that does not respond to distraction, A thought that feels too precise and too complete to be self-generated. An unexpected moment of stillness inside sustained noise. A shift in what your spirit can comfortably tolerate. And a sense of standing at an internal threshold, even when nothing around you has visibly changed. When 3 or more of those markers show up at the same time, you are in a divine approach. Not maybe, not probably. You are in one. The second part is posture. 3 things. You do not rush it. Do not try to force the word to land faster than it is ready to. You do not dismiss it. Your doubt is allowed, but do not let it close the window before the message arrives. And you stay present. The encounter requires your attention, not your perfection. If this message is reaching you in the middle of a season where you needed someone to understand what you have been carrying gently, press the like right now. Not for this space, but so it can reach another chosen one who is somewhere inside their own 4 approaches right now, wondering if they are imagining all of it. Your action in this moment could be their moment of recognition. There is one more layer to what those 4 approaches were doing in you, and it connects everything we have covered to what is about to come next. It has to do with something that scientists have only recently begun to measure. Something about how the human mind receives certain kinds of breakthrough and why some people, just as faithful and just as hungry as you, still could not receive what you are about to receive in this 5th encounter. That discovery and what it means for you standing right here is where we are going next. That discovery, the one the scientists kept finding, the one I told you would connect everything, I am going to bring you there. But there is one more layer of what was happening inside you across those 4 approaches that I need to show you first. Because without it, what I am about to reveal next will not carry the weight it deserves. Here is what happens inside a person after 4 approaches. The mind learns. That is what minds do. They study repeated experiences and they build a protective response. When something gets close and does not fully land 4 times in a row, the mind begins to expect that. It starts to brace. It creates a small wall, just tall enough to keep the hoping from getting ahead of the arriving, and it places that wall right at the edge of every new encounter. Most people call that wall doubt, but doubt is not what most people think it is. Chosen one. The doubt you may be carrying into this 5th encounter, that quiet voice in the back that says, "This is probably like the others," that is not evidence of weak faith. That is not evidence of failure. That is not the absence of God in your story. It is wisdom. Hard-earned, season-tested, lived-in wisdom. The kind that only grows in a person who has been through enough to know that hope has a cost. And that is not something to apologize for. That is something to respect in yourself. So, let me say something directly to the part of you that is sitting slightly behind the door of this message right now. Just close enough to hear, far enough to leave if it needs to. You are allowed to be cautious. You are allowed to carry the memory of what did not land the first time, and the second, and the third, and the fourth. You are allowed to approach this 5th encounter with open hands instead of wide open arms. And you are allowed to receive it anyway, not because you have finally found the right amount of faith, but because the 5th encounter does not require perfection. It requires presence. And you are here. You are allowed to outgrow the ceiling the waiting season tried to assign to you. You are allowed to protect what God is building in you from the voices inside and outside that kept measuring your worth by how long the arrival was taking. You are allowed to lay down the weight of the comparison, the timeline, the everyone else seems to be there already. You do not owe that story another day. If any of what I just said is the thing you needed permission to feel, type Amen right now. Let that be your quiet yes. Let that be the agreement that presence is enough. Now, before we arrive at the deepest moment of this message, I want to tell you something specific about who you are. Not generally, specifically. Because part of what those four approaches were forming in you is a set of capacities that the people around you often could not name, and that you yourself have sometimes struggled to understand. The first is this: you are a seer. Not in a theatrical sense, in a very practical one. You have always been able to perceive things before they become visible to others. Shifts in the atmosphere of a room, the direction a situation is heading before the evidence has caught up, the truth underneath what someone is saying while they are still performing the version they want you to believe. That is not overthinking. That is not hypersensitivity. That is a gift. And it explains something real: why the divine approaches you through signals and signs and quiet interior nudges rather than loud announcements. Because you were built to receive at that frequency. The second is this: you are a voice. Something in you was made to say the thing that the people in the room are already feeling but cannot find words for. When you speak from the real place, from the deep place, not the performed one, something in the people listening settles. They feel recognized. That is not a personality trait. That is an assignment. And the formation you have been going through is partly the reason the voice in you now has something real to draw from. It needed the weight of the lived experience before it could carry the weight of what it was made to say. These two things, the seer and the voice, are part of why this fifth encounter is arriving the way it is. Because what was being formed in you through every approach that did not fully land is exactly the interior depth those two gifts require to operate at their full capacity. Now, let me come back to what I promised. For the past 30 years, there has been a quiet conversation happening in neuroscience research at institutions like MIT, Harvard, Stanford, and Princeton about what physically takes place inside the human brain during moments of genuine breakthrough. The kind of moments people describe as sudden, unexpected clarity, a solution appearing from nowhere, a feeling of deep intuition arriving cleanly and without noise. What the researchers kept finding consistently across study after study using EEG technology and brain mapping is that these moments all occur in the same specific brainwave state, a state they call gamma frequency. Here is what makes that significant. Gamma is not a state most adults live in. It is the state children are born living in naturally, without effort, simply as the baseline of how their minds operate. It is the state of a child who learns something in a single afternoon that takes an adult weeks to absorb. The state where creativity and intuition and what some of those researchers quietly began calling the eureka threshold all live together in the same place at the same time. And then something happens. The research documents it under a name called the decline effect. Starting around age 7, the modern world, the structure of schooling, the accumulated weight of stress, the rhythm of simply trying to survive what life brings, begins to suppress that frequency. Slowly, consistently, over years, until most adults are operating at a fraction of the brainwave capacity they were born into. This is not a spiritual theory. This is measurable data. Electroencephalogram readings, documented, reproducible. And here is where it connects to you specifically, chosen one. The reason those 4 approaches felt like they almost landed, and then did not. The reason the word got close, but could not quite reach the center of you and stay there, may not have been only about spiritual readiness. It may also have been about frequency, because every divine signal, every moment of breakthrough, every encounter that carries real weight requires a receiver that is operating at the right state to receive it. And if that state has been suppressed by everything the years have accumulated on you, Even the most persistent signal cannot fully break through to the level it needs to reach. I am going to come back to this, because what one researcher spent 34 years of his life discovering about how to restore that frequency, and how long it actually takes, is the piece that ties everything we have talked about in this message into a single, complete picture. Stay for it. It is coming in just a moment. And before I go there, I want to plant this. Before this message ends, I am going to speak something over your life that I believe will stay with you long after you leave this space. A declaration that was built through everything we have just walked through together. Do not leave before it arrives. The last part of this is the part it was all moving toward. The GPS has been recalculating across 4 approaches. What comes next is what you have arrived. Actually sounds like when it finally reaches you. You have arrived. Let me say it again, not as encouragement, as a fact. Not, you are getting close. Not, keep going, you are almost there. You have arrived. The preparation is complete. The formation is done. Every season that made no sense, every approach that got close and then went quiet, every recalculation, all of it was the route, and the route has delivered you here. Here is what the 5th encounter actually is, chosen one. Here is the deepest truth. The 4 approaches were not 4 separate messages. They were one message, spoken in 4 different languages, each language chosen specifically for where you were in your formation at that moment in time. The first language was restlessness. The second was a thought too precise to have been self-generated. The third was stillness breaking through the noise. The fourth was the threshold feeling standing at a door you could sense but could not yet name. 4 languages, one message. And right now, in this 5th encounter, you are receiving all 4 of them simultaneously, together, complete, for the first time. I want to share something with you right now, and I want you to receive it carefully. These are words I believe are being placed on my heart for you in this moment, and I want to offer them as such. Every single thing I sent toward you, every approach, every window, every recalculation, was not because I was unsure of you. It was because I was precise for you. I did not send 4 incomplete messages. I sent one complete message in 4 parts, carried across 4 seasons, because each season was building in you the interior space needed to carry what the message required. And I want you to understand, I am not trying again right now. I am completing. What began in the first approach is finishing in the 5th. And I drew a line, and I said, not this time will you miss it, because you are ready, and because what I placed in you was never meant to stay quiet. You were not forgotten. You were being formed. You were not abandoned. You were being anchored. You were not missed. You were being made exactly ready for this. The 5th approach does not ask you to believe harder. It asks you to receive what was always yours. The delay was not divine distance. It was divine precision. Type, I am ready right now, not because you have finally arrived somewhere new, but because you are standing in the place that was always being prepared for you. Now, I want to do something with you, not out loud, not with any movement, just inside, right where you are. Picture a corridor in your mind. Behind you, 4 doors, one for each of the approaches. Each one is closed now, not locked, not something to be ashamed of. Just behind you. Look at them for a moment, not with grief for how long they took, not with regret for what you almost didn't receive, but with recognition. Those rooms were not waiting rooms. They were preparation rooms. Something was built in each one that you are carrying right now, that you could not have carried if the 5th had come before they did. Now turn forward. In front of you, one door. And unlike the four behind you, this one is already open. No threshold left to cross. No more tests to pass first. Just an open door and something steady and real coming through it, and a sense deep in you that what is on the other side was shaped with your exact formation in mind. That is not imagination. That is the position you are actually standing in right now. Now, let me come back to what I promised. A neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake spent 34 years asking a single question. If gamma frequency is the brainwave state where human beings operate at their highest capacity, if it is where intuition lives, and breakthrough lives, and the kind of clarity that people have called divine receptivity lives, then is there a direct way to restore it in an adult whose frequency has been suppressed by decades of stress and noise and the weight of surviving? Not through years of meditation, not through expensive clinical equipment, a direct route. What he found after 3 decades of research, drawing on work done at MIT, Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Berkeley, and the Einstein Center in Berlin is, yes, there is. It is a 7-minute audio track, headphones on, sitting or lying still, eyes soft. And what happens inside those 7 minutes is a process called brain entrainment, specific sound frequencies that guide your brain back to the gamma state, the way a tuning fork causes a string tuned to the same note to begin vibrating without ever being touched. Not through effort, through resonance. He called it the Genius Song. Before I tell you where to find it, I want to tell you about someone, a woman, 38 years old, who had spent 3 years going through everything she could find, retreats, practices. Every method that promised to restore the connection she could sense was just on the other side of something she couldn't get through. She described it as hearing music through a wall. She could feel that it was there. She could not get inside it. 3 weeks after she began listening to the Genius Song, 7 minutes every morning, she said something changed. Not dramatically, quietly, and consistently. She said the synchronicities began arriving, that the universe started speaking a language she could finally understand, that the signals she had always been able to sense but could never quite fully catch, she was now receiving cleanly, completely. She was a seer, like you, and what she had been missing was not more effort or more faith. It was the frequency she was born with, that the years had taken from her, that 7 minutes a day began to restore. Over 18,000 people have now used the Genius Song, and what they describe, across different backgrounds and different stories and different seasons of their lives, maps onto the same shift. The noise in the mind quieting, the intuition sharpening, the sense of divine receptivity opening in ways that years of other practices had not reached. The clinical equipment that generates gamma states professionally costs upward of $7,000. Biofeedback therapy sessions that attempt the same result run $300 per hour and require months of consistent work. Dr. Lake compressed 34 years of research into a 7-minute audio file. With it, he includes 4 additional tools, a second audio track specifically calibrated for younger minds, the foundational book that the film The Secret drew its ideas from, a guided visualization for your 4 most essential areas of life, and a practical reference on the 5 daily habits most consistently associated with living from your full capacity. The standard price is $49. For the people receiving this specific message, Dr. Lake made a different arrangement, $39. Not available on Amazon, not on Spotify, not through any other channel or search result. The only place to receive the original track with the full brain entrainment architecture, all 4 bonuses, and his complete money-back guarantee is through the link in the description and in the pinned comment. Type "I releases" right now. Let go of every story the last season tried to write about. Your ceiling, your capacity, your limits. What those stories said about you was not the truth. One more thing I want to say carefully. There are sites that carry the same name, the same words on the page. But brain entrainment is a precise science. The specific frequency ratios, the layering, the calibration that Dr. Lake spent 34 years perfecting cannot be replicated by copying a product's name. The only version carrying the complete architecture, all 4 bonuses, and the guarantee is through the link below and in the pinned comment, not anywhere else. If something in you recognized what I described as a step that belongs to your 5th encounter, it is there. Only if you feel drawn. The receiver has been prepared. And whether or not that step is yours, what I need you to carry is this. The 5th encounter does not end when this message ends. It begins here. You are not the same person you were when this started. I want you to hear that not as something kind to say at the end, as a statement of fact. The person who pressed play was someone who had walked through 4 approaches and was somehow still here for a 5th. And the person right now has received what was carried across all 4 of those approaches, arriving together, complete, for the first time. That changes something, even if you cannot feel the full weight of it, yet something has shifted. Right now, all across this world, there are chosen ones sitting in their own 5th encounter. Different countries, different stories, different languages they pray in, and different names they use for what they believe in, but the same pursuit. Someone in a different city is hearing this same truth and feeling the same thing move inside them that just moved inside you. Someone who has been in the wilderness longer than they ever planned is standing in the same doorway you are standing in. Someone who had almost decided that a 5th was too much to hope for is receiving the same message you just received. You are not alone in this. The isolation you may have been feeling through the waiting season, the sense that no one around you quite understood what you were carrying or why it was taking this long, that is not evidence you were outside the story. That is what it feels like to be in the part of the story that most people do not reach. The chosen ones who arrive at the 5th encounter are not the ones who had the easiest road. They are the ones who had the most to carry and the most to give. Let me speak to who you are now, not who you are becoming, who you are. You are a seer. You were born to perceive what others overlook, and not as a weight to manage, but as a gift that the people around you genuinely need, and that the season ahead of you will finally give you the room to use the way it was always meant to be used. You are a voice. You were made to say the thing the room is already feeling, and when you speak from the real place, from everything you have lived, people feel seen in a way that changes them. That is not a personality. That is a calling. You are a pioneer. You walked into territory that had no map, not because you were reckless or confused, because the map was not designed for you. It was designed for the ones who follow you, who will walk a path you are clearing right now without yet knowing it. You are a spiritual warrior. You held ground in seasons that should have ended you, and I do not mean that as exaggeration. The specific weight you carried while staying, while not collapsing, while choosing presence over escape, again and again, that is what it means to be built for something that requires endurance as a core quality. And you are a cycle breaker. What ends with you could not have ended without you. What the generations before you could not close the patterns, the ceilings, the inherited limits you were sent to close them. Not because you are better than what came before, because you were specifically equipped for this moment in the story. You are committed. You are commissioned. You are sent. Gently press the like right now, not for this space, but as a signal, as a way of saying that someone else in the dark needs what you just received, and your simple action in this moment could be the thing that places this in front of them at exactly the right time. For those who felt something shift when I talked about the frequency, about the gamma state, about Dr. Lake's 34 years of research, the link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Only if you feel drawn, only if something in you recognized it as a next step that belongs to this season. And before I close this space, if someone came to mind while you were listening, someone who has been unusually quiet lately, someone who has been carrying something they cannot explain to the people around them, someone whose light has been a little dimmer than it used to be, and you are not sure why, share this with them. Not because this message needs a wider reach, because it might be the thing that helps them understand that the waiting was never wasted, that the approaches they felt but could not hold were not failures, that a fifth encounter is not too much to believe in. Your share could be their fifth. Now, let me close this space the way it was always meant to be closed. I want to take a moment right where you are and speak something over your life. Thank you for the season you walked through to get here, for every moment of restlessness you sat with instead of running from, for every moment of doubt you carried without letting it close the door completely, for every time you almost let go and did not. The season that brought you to this fifth encounter was not a detour. It was the route, and it cost something real, and that cost matters, and it is seen. God saw every weight you carried through the last season, the quiet ones, the heavy ones, the ones that never made it into conversation because you did not know how to put words to them. He saw the nights that did not make sense. He saw the faithfulness that no one else witnessed or acknowledged. He saw every small act of staying. I hear the Spirit saying this, and I want to offer it to you carefully, as words placed on my heart for this moment. I saw every moment you held on, and I saw every moment you almost did not. And I want you to know, both of them moved my heart. Not just the holding, the almost letting go too. Because in every one of those moments, you were still reaching, still present, still mine. Right where you are in your mind, not out loud, I want you to bring to the surface everything the last season tried to attach to your name. Every label the waiting gave you. Every old story about your ceiling, your pace, your capacity, your worth. Let them surface. Name them quietly inside yourself. And now, just let the hand open. Not with force, not with effort. Simply open. The old story of delay, release it. The old ceiling of, I have missed too many windows, release it. The wound of feeling invisible and overlooked in the waiting, release it. The lie that your doubt was the same as disqualification, release it. The habit of comparing your timeline to the ones who seem to arrive faster, release it. The pattern of turning away just before the word fully lands, release it. And the version of yourself who walked into this message, still carrying the full weight of 4 approaches without knowing what they were, release that, too. That version did its work. That version held what needed to be held, but you are not that version anymore. Now, I want to speak this over you. I call forward the seer, and I declare it fully operational. No longer suppressed by the confusion of the waiting, no longer questioning whether what it perceives is real. Fully open, fully functioning, ready. I call forward the voice, and I declare that what you have lived is now in your mouth, and the words you were made to speak have been matched by the depth of everything you just came through. I call forward the pioneer, and I declare that the territory ahead of you has already been consecrated by every step you took in the wilderness that no one else saw. I call forward the spiritual warrior, and I declare that the ground you held and the ground you are about to move into is covered against the pull of the old season, trying to reclaim what now belongs to the new one. And I call forward the cycle breaker, and I declare that what ends with you ends here, now, completely. And what begins with you begins in this moment. I cover what is rising, the clarity that is just now coming into focus, the connections that are just beginning to form, the dreams that have been waiting for a version of you that was ready to carry them. I cover all of it against premature exposure. Let it grow protected. Let it build in the right season. Now, inside yourself in the deep place, not the thinking place, say this: I am not who I was when this began. I am a chosen one who was found, not who found my way, who was found. The waiting was preparation, not punishment. The 4 approaches were not failures. They were the message arriving in chapters. And I am standing in the 5th, and I receive it, all of it, in full. Do not say amen yet. Just sit in this for a moment. Let what just landed settle into something deeper than thought, into the part of you that does not need to analyze what happened in order to carry it. It is done, it is sealed, and so it is. Amen. You are not leaving a message right now. You are leaving a season. And the one who pursued you across 5 approaches, who recalculated 4 times, who drew a line and said, "Not this time," is not finished with you. This was not the end of the pursuit. This was the moment the pursuit became a partnership. Go well, go grounded, go knowing that what was sent toward you across 5 encounters, you received it today, all of it, in full. And what comes next will show you exactly why it was worth every approach.